Well, I hope this is going to be a fairly quick video, and it's going to cover something I've realised we haven't covered before, which is preparing your paints before you use them. I mentioned it briefly in lots of videos, but I thought it was worth doing a specific video. Most paints will separate over an amount of time. Both water-based and solvent-based glass paints will separate. Now, how bad this is depends on how long it is since you've used them. If you've used them fairly regularly, you're going to get away, in most cases, with giving a stir. We'll deal with water-based paints so far. This is a thick water-based paint. I can open it up, check it, give it a little stir. Now, I want to be gentle, because what I don't want to do, if at all possible, is to introduce any air bubbles into it. I can see here there's a hard piece. I'm going to take that out, hopefully. Ah, that's horrible. We'll get rid of that. I'll put it over there where I can probably put my hands in it later, because that would only block up the hole. Now that all seems okay, and while you're there, let's get rid of that. While you're there, you can check the hole, get a pin, which I have here. Excuse me, I'll just have to do some of that stick for a second. Get a pin and just check. That was obvious that was going to happen. Just check that the hole is okay, nice and clear, and there's no hard paint there. That's all okay, so that should now be fine to use. I did it gently so I didn't put too much air into it. And there we go. Right, so that's a thick water-based paint. Thin water-based paints are very similar. Now this is a flowing water-based paint. I hope you can see, I'll try and zoom in, that has gone separated completely. It's meant to be blue, and what it actually is white on top and blue underneath. So again, take a stick. Now this one hasn't been used for quite a while. It's going to take a bit more stirring. So if at all possible, you should do this several hours, if not a day, before you intend using the paint, because what vigorous stirring is doing is introducing air bubbles, and the last thing you want to do is move those air bubbles over to your work. So that's now been mixed. I will give it a little bit of a shake, and hopefully, although it will now be in the lid obviously, you see that now is a proper colour, but I can already see there are air bubbles in there. You should leave it at least a couple of hours, if not overnight, for those air bubbles to come back out. Exactly the same is true of solvent-based paints, and I'll go for the flowing ones. It can happen with both transparent and specialised solvent paints. I'll start with this one. This is a white transparent, and I hope you can see there very clearly the colour pigments at the bottom, and you've got what, to all intents and purposes, is a clear liquid above. So using that obviously will be no point whatsoever. It's completely clear. So again, get a stick, make sure it's a clean one, and get it right down there into the colour pigment and give it a good stir. Now that isn't going to be enough. Get right around the edge, get as much of that colour pigment as possible loose. And this paint has been sitting for possibly months. It's a new bottle, so I've had it a couple of months and not used it yet. I don't know how long it was sitting prior to that. So I do that, and now I'm going to give it a shake. really good shake. Yes, I'm introducing loads of air bubbles into it, but it needs to be mixed. And again, now you can see the colour is mixed. And if I were to use it now, compared to the clear it was before, you've now got the nice white colour. But again, I can see the air bubbles in it. I should leave this at least a couple of hours. If I want to use it in a couple of hours, which is quite quick, I'm going to come back to it every few minutes and just do that. Just tap it, and that will help the air bubbles to come out. Now I can use that in a couple of hours or tomorrow. For the next week or so, all I need to do is stir it. I won't need to shake it again. All I should need to do is stir it, and you should be able to tell whether it's separated so much that you need to stir and shake, or whether you'll just get away with a stir. Obviously a gentle stir won't put air bubbles into it. The hardest paints, the most difficult ones, are the specialised solvent ones. This is a bit of an old bottle. This one's Prisme and Fantasy, and their Moon ones are exactly the same. And hopefully you can see on the bottom, actually stuck on there is the pearlise pigment. It's not the colour pigment, that is the pearlise pigment. I might be able to get to show you a bit. Hope you can see a mixture of pigment and paint on there, but it really does. You have to scrape it off the bottom, because I can see in here, you know, it's clear. And the pigment is really stuck to the bottom of the jar. And unless I can give that a really good shake, I'm not going to get the effect I want to get. It happens with lots of pearlise paints. Let me see which one you can see best. You see that one quite clear? That's a lemon pearl, and again you can see the pearlise pigment on the bottom. And the more clear liquid on the top. I hope to do a sort of side-by-side comparison, but if you can see that, now I'll give it a good stir. Get that pigment off the bottom. Top back on, give it a shake. Now you should see it looks very different. You got a nice pigmented colour there rather than the separate colour. I can't stress enough, if you can see there again, you've got the separate colour and pigment. I can't stress enough A, how much you need to do this to get the full effect, but B, you don't want to use paint with air bubbles in, because you will be chasing the air bubbles around your work trying to lift them out. So do this a good couple of hours before you intend using the paint, or even the day before. Won't have to happen every time. It won't separate that much in a day or two, but if your paints haven't been used for a couple of weeks, you will notice them separated, and there we are, we've got back to a decent colour again. Hopefully I can do some side-by-side comparisons. So to sum up, all your paints will separate over time. Whether you can get away with just stirring them, whether you'll have to shake them as well, depends on how long they've been left standing and how separated they've become. But if you do need to shake them, you've got to do that well before you intend using them to give the air bubbles time to lift out. All these, or certainly these flowing paints, should be ready for using in a couple of hours. The thick one, if you've had to shake that, that's best left overnight, because in the thicker paints the air bubbles take longer to come out. Some of you will see that all as being very obvious, but do give time beforehand to prepare your paints. Final thing to mention, some of the water-based paints will thicken up, or some of the solvent-based paints will thicken up. If they've gone hard, you've probably lost them. There's not much you can do. But if they've gone thicker, with the water-based paints you can add a couple of drops of water. Don't add too much, but just add a few drops and see if you can get it back to its original consistency. With solvent-based paints, it's important to read the manufacturer's website and find out what type of solvent you need to use to thin them down. Some companies will sell their own thinners, some will say you can use white spirit or whatever, but do read the manufacturer's website to find out what thinner you need to use with various solvent-based paints. Do that all at the same time as you mix them, and then your paints will be ready to use when you next need to use them, as long as it's not too far away. Okay, that was slightly longer than I thought, but good luck and happy glass painting.